So there's this phrase that's out there that if you've been watching like rapture videos or end time watchmen on YouTube or wherever, you're going to hear this phrase from time to time, and the phrase is, when we go up, they come down. Okay, when we go up, they come down. When we are raptured, okay, the they who comes down are Satan and his fallen angels, where the idea is that we're going to kind of cross paths and we don't really connect in any kind of meaningful way. We'll go up and the fallen angels will come down. The Bible does talk about this, and it's pretty clear in Revelation chapter 12. When you read through the book and you understand the symbols that Revelation uses in that chapter, you'll understand that this is something that is going to happen. We are going to go up, and Satan's angels are going to come down. So what we're going to talk about in this video today is the relationship between believers and the fallen angels in terms of the time of the end, and what is going to be our interaction with one another, and including the timing of when angels are cast out of heaven, because we can know the timing for that. And the second part is really when does Satan and his angels, when are they going to be coming to the earth? Now, Revelation 12 actually gives us two different times when we read about fallen angels being cast out of heaven or coming to the earth. And let's just take a look at that. We're going to see that the first time is in Revelation 12, and it's in the context of the sign of the dragon. So Revelation 12, 1 and 2 talk about the sign of the woman, which I believe was a sign that was in the starry heavens. It was the constellation Virgo, and Jupiter was in the womb of Virgo, or Betula, the Hebrew name for that constellation. Jupiter was in the womb of that constellation for 9 months, which is a full-term gestation. So I think that this was actually pinpointing a moment in time, which was sort of our heads up. Now, my thought originally was this began a 7-year period of time, but we're actually in a gap. We don't know how much time is between the sign of the woman and the sign we're going to read about in a minute, the sign of the dragon. We don't know how much time is going to elapse because the Bible doesn't tell us. Okay, so it tells us a sequence or order of events, but it doesn't tell us when. So we know this one happened. I'm convinced anyway that this sign of the woman happened in 2017 over the Feast of Trumpets in September of that year. What we have is a period of time. This is what I would call the delay. We do not know how much time is going to elapse between the sign of the woman and the events associated with the sign of the dragon. Okay, the sign of the dragon, we could actually call it the signs of the rapture, because the only true signs for the rapture are actually encased in the sign of the dragon. Okay, this is the sign that is going to be explaining to us what is going to happen in the context of the rapture of the child into the throne room of God. And I believe that this is the rapture of that we see the 24 elders then appearing in heaven as saints before the throne of God. The 24 elders are connected with the throne of God. The man-child, who is Christ, is connected with the child, who are believers, who are going to rule and reign with him. Okay, so let's just take a look at this passage in Revelation chapter 12. We'll start with verse 3. This is after the sign of the woman. Okay, and another sign appeared in heaven, and I'm going to stop right here. Okay, a lot of people think that because this first sign appeared in the starry heavens, that the second sign must necessarily also appear in the starry heavens. But the context would seem to indicate, as we'll read a little further here, the context would indicate that we're not talking about the starry heavens anymore, where the sun, moon, and stars are, that the sign of the woman was located in. What we're talking about now is the heaven where God dwells and where the fallen angels dwell. We're not talking about the stars. although they may play into it, the story is no longer about what's going on in the heavens. It's about what's happening in the dynamic between Satan, his angels, Christ, and his followers. Okay, so this is the dynamic of the sign of the dragon. We're not looking for particularly some signs in the heavens anymore. What we're looking for now is actual events that are going to take place on the earth and in heaven. So let's just go back to verse 3 of Revelation 12. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 diadems upon his heads. I've done some videos in the past about the beasts of Revelation and their heads and their horns and where the crowns are located, because the scarlet beast, the beast from the sea, and the dragon all have 7 heads and 10 horns, but the crowns are going to be in different places. Here, Satan has the crowns on his 7 heads, which means that he's been in control of the 7 empires or the 7 kings that John talks about later. That 5 have fallen, 1 is, and 1 is to come, and when he comes, he remains just a little while. The scarlet beast doesn't have any crowns at all, which means basically he's powerless. And remember, the harlot rides the scarlet beast. So the harlot is the one who's controlling the scarlet beast. Okay, the scarlet beast will die. He will resurrect, whatever that means, and he will be indwelt by Apollyon, okay, who is the king of the Watchers, the angels of the bottomless pit, who mated with human women prior to the flood. So Apollyon is the spirit that will indwell the beast or the Antichrist, not Satan. Satan is not going to indwell the Antichrist. Apollyon will. So when the beast rises from the sea, he has crowns on his 10 horns, okay, because he's going to be in alignment with 10 kings who are given power for 1 hour. And then we'll read in Revelation 13 that the dragon will give his power, his throne, and his authority to the beast. So the beast, in essence, will be given the crowns, the 7 crowns belonging to the dragon here, who is Satan. Plus, you'll have the 10 crowns on his horns that come from the kings, the authority that comes from those 10 kings, so that he carries all the authority of Satan and these temporal kings, the 10 kings. So that's just an aside. That's some of the clues that you look at when you look at the details that are in the book of Revelation. Okay, you got to look at the details and let the details speak. Don't just gloss over them. Let them say what they're saying and not what they're not saying. Okay, so let's go back to the dragon again. Verse 4, his tail swept down 1/3 of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. Okay, so whose tail cast what to the earth? Okay, so we're talking about the earth here. Okay, so we know we're talking about the heaven where God and actually Satan and his angels are all in heaven, and we're talking about the earth. Okay, Satan, the dragon, is the one who casts 1/3 of the stars to the earth. So we're not talking about, that in the beginning, 1/3 of the angels went with Satan and 2/3 stayed with God. That's not what this passage is saying, even though that's what's been taught for years and years and years, that 1/3 of the angels went with Satan. That's not what this is saying. This is saying that Satan cast 1/3 of his angels to the earth. Okay, he is not going to take all of his angels and cast them to the earth. And he doesn't have control over God's angels. He only has authority or control over the rebellious angels, the fallen angels. So he's going to take his tail and cast 1/3 of his angels to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to bear a child, that he might devour her child when he brought it forth. Okay, so the dragon is Satan. He's cast his stars, his angels, to the earth. And in Revelation chapter 1, Jesus tells us that stars can also be thought of as angels, which that word angelos also means messengers. We don't know what form these angels are going to take, these stars of Satan. Are they going to look like people? Are they going to look like aliens? Are they, we don't know what they're going to look like. All we know is that they're going to appear. And we do know that angels, fallen angels, even Satan has the ability to disguise himself as an angel of light. And angels often appear as men. They can assume all kinds of forms. So, we don't know exactly what this is going to look like, but we know that when we see it, we'll recognize it for something. Okay, we'll recognize that it's happening because this is a sign. Okay, and signs are meant to be seen. So his tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman. Okay, so who is the woman in this passage? The woman alludes to Israel. Remember, she had a crown of 12 stars over her head. This actually kind of harkens back to Joseph's dream, where the sun, moon, and stars bowed down to him. Later in Revelation 12, we'll read about how the dragon is going to persecute the woman, but she's going to flee into the wilderness where she has a place prepared for her by God. So the woman is Israel and the remnant of Israel. Okay, so we know that the dragon is standing before Israel, the nation of Israel, which includes the remnant of Israel. And the woman is about to bear a child. In Revelation 12, in the second verse there, we know that the woman is in travail. So we're going to have to ask that question. What does travail symbolize? The woman is about to bear a child, which means she's in the worst part of having a baby. Okay, she's in the place where those contractions are stronger and stronger, and more frequent and really unbearable. She's in a hard place. So in my mind, my estimation, how I understand scriptures, by going back to other scriptures, like in the book of Jeremiah, where the question is asked, why are all men standing there with their hands on their bellies like a woman in travail? And it talks about this terrible invasion from Babylon, this terrible conflict that is happening. And I believe travail is a war. It's a war or an invasion or something that puts Israel in a position of extreme distress. Okay, and the dragon is on the earth that he might devour her child when she brought it forth. Okay, so notice the dragon isn't out to get Israel. He isn't about, doing anything to the woman. Not at this point in time. Later, yes. Later on, after he's cast out of heaven, he's going to pursue the woman who bore the child. But in this point in time, he is not focused on the woman. He is focused on the child that is about to be born. He wants to devour the child as soon as it's born. Or verse 5, she brought forth a male child, that is a son, a male. This is the word for son there is weos, that's the Greek word, and it means the son who inherits. This is the heir, okay? So we're talking about a man-child or a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, and this is Christ. He's the one who is the one who inherits, who is going to rule all nations during the millennium with a rod of iron. He is not ruling all nations yet. That hasn't happened yet. Okay, he's the male child. But her child, and this again is a different Greek word. This is the word teknon. This just means a descendant. So her child was raptured. Her child was caught up to God and to his throne. And of course, the throne room is where we see the 24 elders who appear as rulers. They are also people who are going to rule with Christ during the millennium as kings. Okay? And then verse 6, and the woman fled into the wilderness. So the order of events appears to be this, with the sign of the dragon, which is a sign of different events that are going to take place on the earth and in heaven. Okay, so the first thing is a third of Satan's stars or angels are cast out by Satan. Satan is doing the casting out here. Okay, and Satan himself is not cast out. He's controlling a third of his angels, and he's bringing them to the earth as reinforcements or backup, because he wants to devour the child as soon as it's born. Before the child can be born, though, there has to be travail. Okay, so there has to be the travail of the woman. Okay, that's a war or an invasion. Okay, so there are two things that are happening here. Fallen angels are coming to the earth, and the woman is in travail, and we haven't been raptured yet. Okay, the kings and priests of Revelation chapters 4 and 5, they have not been caught up to God and to the throne room in heaven. They've not been caught up yet. Okay, Satan is standing before the woman to devour the child. Okay, doesn't say he's going to devour the man-child. He's going to devour the child, which is a different entity. In Revelation, we always see Christ and his kings and priests, his 24 elders, those who rule and reign with him. They are always connected with him. Revelation chapter 5, we see Christ in the midst of the 24 elders. Here, the man-child, the male child, is with the child. Okay, now Satan wants to devour believers as soon as they're born. Okay, now the birth of the child and the rapture of the child are two different events. Okay, so what is the birth and what is the catching away? Okay, when the child is caught up. Okay, and this is the Greek word harpazo. So this is the word for rapture. Okay, so I think we can assume that the catching away, that the child is caught up to God and to his throne, that's rapture. That means people are transferred into heaven. Okay, the birth of the child is something else. Okay, the birth is not rapture. The birth is not being caught up. The child is caught up after it's born. Okay, after it's born. So what is the birth? I believe that is our final glorification. Paul talks a lot about glorification, that if we suffer with him, we'll be glorified with him. Right? Glorification is when the Holy Spirit brings life to our mortal body. He gives us an immortal body. We're going to be glorified. Glorification happens before the child is caught up. Okay, so this is a series of events that are equated with the sign of the dragon. A third of his angels, Satan casts them to the earth. This is backup because he wants to devour the child. The child is born in the midst of travail, a war in Israel, or an invasion, and the birth is the glorification of the child. The child will be caught up, which is the child will be raptured, and we know that the child is a male child, so there's an 8-day connection there as well. So it may be that there's 8 days between glorification and rapture. Okay, so the child is caught up to God and to his throne, and the woman fled into the wilderness where she has a place prepared by God. Okay, so this is the order of events here. So here's what this looks like, okay? The first time that we see angels being cast to the earth, we see that Satan is the one that casts them out. We see that it's in the context of a war or an invasion in Israel. We see that it happens before the rapture of the child, and there's only a third of Satan's angels that are cast to the earth. Okay, so in a minute here, we're going to look at the war in heaven, and we're going to see how when Satan and his angels are finally cast out of heaven, it's a totally different scenario. Okay, so let's look at verse 7 of Revelation 12. Now, war arose in heaven. Okay, different place. In this sign that the war or invasion involves Israel. This is a war that arose in heaven, and Michael and his angels were fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought, but they were defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who's called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. So the second time we see angels being cast from heaven. It's Michael who casts them out. Okay, Michael is the one that casts them out, right? This is in the context of a war in heaven. Okay, it's not a war in Israel or an invasion of Israel. The third thing is this takes place after the child is in heaven. Because later we're going to read that it's after the dragon's on the earth that he pursues the woman. Okay, he doesn't pursue the woman until after the child is born and after he's been cast out of heaven. Okay, and this time around, all the angels and Satan are cast out, not just a third. Okay, so we can see these are two very different events. Now, when it comes to the war in heaven, we're not going to be here for that. We'll actually be in heaven watching Satan being cast out, as Revelation 12, beginning with verse 10, tells us, okay? And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, "Now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and of his Christ have come down. For the accuser of our brethren," okay, so we know that it's believers that are talking here, not angels, because angels don't have brethren, but people do. The accuser of our brethren has been thrown down, and that's Satan who accuses believers, who accuses them day and night before our God, and they've conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they love not their lives even unto death. Rejoice then, O heaven, and you that dwell therein, but woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows his time is short. All right, and verse 13, and when the dragon saw that he'd been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who'd borne the male child. But the woman was given 2 wings like a great eagle. So we know that the woman is going to flee after the abomination of desolation. That's what Matthew chapter 24 tells us. Okay, so there's 1,260 days here that the woman flees. Okay, so sometime before that point in time, Satan is cast out of heaven. Okay, in verse 17, the dragon was angry with the woman. Okay, and then when he realized he couldn't get her, he went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and bear testimony to Jesus. And he stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads. Okay, so Satan is cast out. He's going to stand on the sand of the sea and wait for the beast to come out of the sea. The sea is the sea of death. So Satan is going to stand waiting for his fallen son, the Antichrist, to rise from the dead, okay? And then he'll give the beast all his power, his throne, and his great authority. And one of his heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but his mortal wound was healed. Okay, so that's talking about the resurrection of the beast here. Okay, so there's actually 2 times when fallen angels are going to come to the earth from heaven. The first time is when Satan casts he casts his own angels to the earth to get the reinforcements and the backup to devour the child as soon as it's born. Then the second time that angels are cast to the earth is going to be when Michael casts them out, and it's all the angels that are cast to the earth as a result of a war in heaven, not a war on earth. And this takes place after the child is caught up to God and to his throne, and it involves all the angels. Looking at the details of this is really important, and you can make a timeline for this. It's not that difficult. All you have to do is just read the passage and think about it a little bit. That when it talks about Satan being cast out of heaven, that isn't the sign of the dragon, okay? That's over here, and it's not a sign, okay? Satan and his angels all being cast out by Michael is not a sign, but the sign of the dragon is. So what are we looking for? We're looking for 2 things, okay? And this is what I've said for like years now. We're looking for 2 things to happen. We're looking for a third of Satan's angels to be cast to the earth. That could look like alien disclosure with all kinds of UFO activity taking place. It could also be just an influx of this sort of demonic spirit that's happening. It could be who knows what this is going to look like. But I think we'll know it when we see it. You can't have a third of Satan's angels coming to the earth and not know about it. Okay, this is something that we're going to know about. And the second thing is we're looking for this invasion. Okay, and I think this is the Gog-Magog war. Okay, I think that's right here. I think that's the travail of the woman of Israel. Okay, and it's in the context of these fallen angels that Satan casts out and this invasion that the child is glorified. Believers, kings and priests, people who are going to rule and reign with Christ are going to be glorified. And then there's I believe there's an 8-day window before the child is caught up to God and to his throne. So it isn't exactly true that when we go up, they come down. They're actually going to come down. The kings and priests are going to go up, okay? The 24 elders who are going to rule and reign, they go up. And then just before the abomination of desolation takes place, Satan will be cast out of heaven. And Daniel chapter 12 talks about Michael arising. And when Michael arises, there's going to be a terrible time that has never been since the beginning of time for the nation of Israel. That is going to be right here, okay? And when Daniel asks the angel, how long will that be? The angel raises his right hand and he swears by him who lives forever and ever that it's going to be for a time, times and half a time, 1,260 days or 3.5 years. Now, for me, people are always asking me, do you think the rapture, could happen this year? And by the way, I believe there's more than one rapture. There has to be in order for Revelation and all the prophetic passages that we read in other books of the New Testament as well as the Old Testament, that there has to be more than one rapture. And I explain this in my book, A Kingdom of Priests, The Stories of Revelation. I explain it in a lot of my other videos as well. But even if you don't buy into 3 raptures, I think that there's a rapture that's going to take place, perhaps this year. And what we're looking for, okay, is not, an increase in volcanoes and, earthquakes and all of that. That the earthquakes, the volcanoes, the signs in the sun, moon, and stars, and all of that stuff that's going to take place where the sun is turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord, those are signs for the day of the Lord. And the day of the Lord is the equivalent of the wrath of God, which happens after the tribulation of those days. So there's going to be the tribulation of those days, and then toward the end of it, there's going to be the 7 bowls of God's wrath, and then the second coming of Christ. Okay, so the day of the Lord has the sun darkening and the moon turning to blood and, all these terrible things that are associated with that day. And by the way, that day is going to be 1,000 years long, okay, according to Peter. But anyway, all of that's extra stuff that I talk about in my other videos. So I hope you'll share this video with someone else. I hope you'll give me a thumbs up and put your questions and comments in the comments section, and we'll see you on another video. Till then, have a blessed day.